What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my little window setup thing, whatever you want to call it. This is the setup I use for Fun Video Friday, for the most part, kind of where I talk about something that's happening in the college football world. And initially, this video was going to be all about disciplinary action taken upon the University of Michigan because of the whole sign stealing thing, or I should say taken upon the University of Michigan and or head coach Jim Harbaugh because of the whole sign stealing thing. Now, it has been rumored and there have been things flying out all week that we are finally going to get some disciplinary action on this whole situation involving Connor Stalions, the University of Michigan, and illegally stealing signs. And that's a whole other video that I could have on what else has happened, but I feel like everyone knows what else has happened, and until we get some disciplinary action, I don't necessarily want to make another video on it because it's just beating a dead horse at that point. So if we get some disciplinary action, which again has been rumored to cut out today, or rumored to come out today, which, by the way, I think is absolutely gutless. I think it's stupid if you go suspend Jim Harbaugh, if you fine the university, whatever, right before one of the biggest games of the college football season against the Penn State Nittany Lions. But we'll see what happens with that. If there is disciplinary action that comes out, I definitely will be making another video about that today. And I'm also not even here to talk about the Lane Kiffin soundbite that came out, because I've pretty much agreed with the things that everyone is saying about that. If you don't know what happened, there was a defensive lineman that was on scholarship that I believe was also getting NIL money. The name is escaping my mind. That ended up deciding to take a mental health break from the team without telling the head coach. And then Lane Kiffin and all the coaching staff tried to get him to come into the office, as in, hey, the head coach wants to talk to you. And the defensive lineman even said, quote, "Oh, I'm just not ready to talk to him yet." You can't even do that at a volunteer job. If you go work, and I'm going to reiterate what Josh Pate said here, as I did watch his live stream last night and him talk about all of this. Pretty much agree with everything he said, but he also said if you go work at a soup kitchen and you don't show up because you don't feel like it, oh, but hold my spot, I'll be back when I'm ready, you're going to get let go. You're going to get fired, and you're going to be asked not to come back. So I pretty much agree with everything everyone has been saying about that. What I haven't seen a whole lot of videos about from college football content creators is the situation that you saw in the thumbnail surrounding the James Madison Dukes and the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. Obviously, James Madison is going to get the big storylines here because they are a ranked team according to the AP poll, and one of the only undefeated teams left in the country, and obviously they sit atop of the Sun Belt Conference right now, but they cannot compete in a Sun Belt championship game, and they also cannot compete they also can't compete for a New Year's Six bowl game spot, and they also can't go even to a bowl game because of the FCS to FBS transition 2-year period rule, to where you have to basically forfeit your rights to go to a bowl game. You have to forfeit your rights to play at a higher level of competition besides the regular season, because you are trying to transition from the FCS to the FBS. James Madison has already tried to appeal this. I believe they tried to appeal it back in April of either this year or last year, but they are trying to appeal it again now. It came out around 2 or 3 days ago as of recording this video that James Madison is going to try to appeal the transition rule so that they can get into a bowl game, they can get into a Sun Belt championship game, things like that. So that is what this video is here to talk about. But let me give you some context on where both of the two teams sit right now. Obviously, James Madison, again, as I said, is going to provide all of the headlines. They're currently sitting at 9-0. They are outscoring opponents by over 100 points total on the season. They are 6-0 in conference. They are atop of the Sun Belt East Division. But even with that fact, you cannot compete in a bowl game and you cannot compete in the Sun Belt title game. And even though they're undefeated, you still cannot compete for a New Year's Six bowl game spot because of the FCS to FBS transition rule. And if you don't know what that is, if you are an FCS program and you want to make the jump to the FBS level on top of some other requirements, you also have to go through a 2-year, what the NCAA calls transition period, where you basically are trying to get all of your facilities FBS ready. You're trying to get basically a whole bunch of requirements met while you are playing football at the FBS level, and because of that, you also forfeit your right to play in a bowl game, in a conference championship, basically at any higher level of competition besides that of the regular season. James Madison is trying to appeal that. Now, I don't know if it would only apply to James Madison because Jacksonville State is sitting in the same boat right now too. They are currently a 7-win team. They're sitting at 7-3, and they are also in second place in Conference USA. So Jacksonville State is a team that transitioned over from the FCS to the FBS level this season, but still cannot compete for a spot. Still cannot compete for a spot in a bowl game or in the Conference USA Championship, which as of right now, they're currently slated to participate in unless this waiver thing gets denied, or unless this waiver thing that James Madison sent out gets approved. Now, I don't think it would apply for Jacksonville State as well, but I haven't seen the full extent of the paperwork that James Madison has sent over to the offices of the NCAA. But let's go ahead and kind of take a look at what James Madison said here in this article. So this article that I'm pulling information from is from, I'm going to butcher your last name, Mark. I'm sorry, Mark Schlabach, an ESPN senior writer. So this is the article that I'm pulling from. If you want to go check the article out yourself, you can find it on ESPN.com. But the opening paragraph reads, quote, James Madison officials made another plea to the NCAA Division I Board of Directors Monday, so this again happened on Monday, to reduce its football program's FCS to FBS transition from 2 years to 1. So the undefeated Dukes can be eligible to compete in a postseason bowl game this season. And I don't think I've explained this yet, so I'll explain it now. The only reason that schools like James Madison and Jacksonville State would be allowed to compete in postseason play this year is if there are not enough 6-6 bowl eligible teams. So unless we get just not enough teams finishing at 500 or above that would get into the postseason, James Madison and Jacksonville State would be the first teams that the NCAA would look at, or that the NCAA, that the FBS presidents would look at and say, okay, we're going to take you guys to go to a bowl game, and then they would go on to look at some willing and deserving 5 and 7 teams. So you would take James Madison and Jacksonville State first before you go to the 5 and 7 teams. But even having to do that is, again, a lot of people say it's ridiculous, and I'm one of those people, right? I don't like the whole FCS to FBS transition rule, but rules are rules, and it is what it is. So the article continues, quote, in a letter to NCAA Division I Board of Directors Chairman Jure Moorhead, I know I butchered that first name as well, the University of Georgia president, JMU president Jonathan Alger, and athletic director Jeff Bourne argue that the Dukes have, quote, embarked on this transition in ways that no other institution has since the transition rules changed 23 years ago, end quote, and that their, again, quote, student athletes have achieved an astonishing, unprecedented level of success during this period, and that quote and end quote in that paragraph as well. James Madison officials have, again, come out and spoken other things. Go down the article a little bit. Quote, under NCAA rules, this is what the transition period is. Teams making the transition from FCS to FBS are ineligible for the postseason the first 2 years. And on April 27th, the NCAA denied James Madison's appeal to complete the 2-year transition in only one season. The article goes on to continue to say that James Madison is the first ever school to try to appeal this thing. The NCAA denied it back in April, and the whole thing that I just told you with the whole thing that I just told you with the fact that if there are not enough 6-6 teams, then you would pull from James Madison and Jacksonville State first before you move on to other teams. What it also goes on to state is, quote, the NCAA Transformation Committee established new FBS membership requirements that will go into effect August 1st, 2027. We're going to talk about that too. In the letter to Moorhead, JMU officials wrote that, quote, due to the diligence and planning of our institution, we were able to confirm that we are meeting the updated requirements now. We will have met full FBS membership requirements in both years of our transition, and we will continue to meet them in the future. What are these new requirements? I was not sure what these new requirements were. I was unfamiliar with this until I went to look it up. So let me see what these requirements are. I got to scroll up on this other article that was written by Zach Barnett on footballscoop.com. So that's where I'm pulling this information from. Opening paragraph is, quote, if the If the NCAA Division I Council has its way, the minimum cost to transition from FCS to FBS will soon be $11 million. So for starters, the council would drop the attendance requirements. FBS teams are required to average at least 1,500,000 in attendance over a rolling 2-year period in favor of a standard that would establish a minimum number of scholarships offered to compete in football's highest division. So from the announcement, this is the announcement made by the NCAA Council. Quote, if adopted, all FBS schools would be required to provide 90% of the total number of allowable scholarships over a 2-year rolling period across at least 16 sports, including football. So you can also play that into with the Title IX requirements as well. Schools also would be able to offer at least 210 scholarships each year, amounting to no less than $6 million in athletic scholarships offered. So you are asking schools to shell out $6 million for at least 210 scholarship-filled positions. On top of now, the transition fee to move from FCS to FBS is going to increase by a factor of 1,000, from $5,000 to $5 million. From $5,000 to $5 million. That is ludicrous, in my opinion. That is insane. And if you are going to update, this is where my opinion is coming in now. I'm no longer reading for the article, so end quote. If you are going to have schools shell out $6 million in scholarships, if you're going to provide them to have at least, or if you're going to need them to have at least 16 sports, 90% scholarships that are going to be allowed over a 2-year period, you're asking them to shell out $6 million, and then you're also going to ask them to pay an additional $5 million just to transition up a level of competition. They absolutely should be able to go to the postseason. Why would you not be able to go to the postseason if you're shelling out $11 million for at least 210 athletes, and then you have to factor in the NIL part of it too? There are students at James Madison that are at Jacksonville State that right now are making NIL money on top of all the money that they are going to need to be required to pour into their athletics because of this new transition rule. Quote from the article on footballscoop.com again, quote, these requirements will directly benefit college athletes competing in Division I sports by requiring significant investment in scholarship opportunities, said John Steinbrecher, commissioner of the Mid-American Conference and vice chair of the Division I Council. Quote again, over the past several years, the NCAA's collected data about spending at FBS schools indicate that these requirements are reasonable and attainable for the majority of impacted athletic programs. I do not disagree with what he just said. However, I do think that it is very, very fair to say that if you're going to require these schools to be able to do all of that, to shell out at least $11 million and be able to shell out 210 scholarships throughout 16 schools, which a lot of the FBS schools have now, and just moving down the pipeline, a lot of the schools that want to enter have that as well. But you also then cannot tell me that, okay, we're going to make you go through all that, we're going to make you shell out all that money, and then you have to wait 2 years in order to get into postseason play. It just does not make a whole lot of sense to me. Quote again from the footballscoop.com article, the proposals will now be forwarded to Division I membership for feedback. A date for a vote has not been scheduled. If approved, the new scholarship standard would become effective August 1st, 2027 for existing FBS schools and schools applying to transition to FBS in 2024-2025. That, I believe, would end up being next year. Or thereafter would have to meet the 90%, $210, $6 million rule within 2 years of joining. The $5 million transfer fee would also go into effect immediately. So this is for a school like Kennesaw State that is looking to come in next season in 2024 and 2025. The 90%, $210, $6 million rule is going to come into effect for them. Now, Kennesaw State has seen a lot of success with their football program at the FCS level, and even their basketball team as well has done some really, really nice things. They made it through the NCAA tournament, gave the Xavier Musketeers a good run for their money last season. But to me, in my personal opinion, do I get why the NCAA has this little transitional rule period thing? Yeah, maybe, but I also see it as, especially now with the new requirements coming out, as fairly pointless if you're going to make schools shell out all this money, have to go through all of these requirements for you. And now look, the 2-year thing is so that schools can be able to get up to that, right? That is what the 2-year period sits at. However, to what I believe, so this is where I'm going to kind of play a little devil's advocate, if you want to call it that. While I do think the transitional period is on the surface very, very pointless, looking at all of this, I see now that the transitional period is kind of an opportunity for these schools to just kind of catch up. So if you want to transition over to the FBS level, you are given these 2 years to sort of just catch up and sort of just to be able to meet the requirements that it sits at. However, I believe that if schools meet those requirements earlier, which is what James Madison has done, by the way, that they should be able to, again, do what James Madison has done, send out a letter of appeal, be able to appeal it so that they can compete in postseason competition. James Madison has met the, I don't know if they've met the new requirements that are scheduled to be voted on here fairly soon. In fact, this article on footballscoop.com was written on June 28th, 2023. I would assume that is already voted, especially because here in the ESPN article, it says that they have already been voted on. So on August 1st, 2027, the 90%, 210, 6 million rule will be going into effect for all of FBS programs. Taking a look here at all of this and just peeling back the whole curtain, yes, it is seems very, very dumb on the surface on why this whole transitional period has to happen, especially if James Madison is going to look, or I should say if James Madison playing the football that they are right now, even Jacksonville State, they are bowl eligible programs. Why are they not allowed to compete in bowl games? And it's this transitional period for them to be able to meet these requirements. However, from the sounds of it, seems like James Madison is already meeting the requirements that are active now. Jacksonville State, I believe, is either close or already has met these requirements. And so, again, if there are not enough 6-6 teams, they are going to go to James Madison. They're going to go to Jacksonville State first. The transitional period is a period for these schools that are transitioning up a level of competition to be able to meet these new requirements over the next 2 years. JMU officials, pulling from the ESPN article again, noted in the letter to Moorhead that the Dukes are 15-3 against FBS competition in the past 2 seasons, and they're the only program to be ranked in the AP poll in each of the 2 years while transitioning from FCS to FBS. The team has missed out on some COVID things. In fact, James Madison, I believe, was in a championship game at the FCS level during that COVID season. So was the Sam Houston State Bearcats as well. Obviously, they're 1-8. But hey, I mean, maybe it'll apply to them next year if they really start to step things up. But James Madison has played some really, really good football. This is a really, really good program. I believe that they deserve to be in a bowl game. I think they should be ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee. The Playoff Committee may not be ranking them because of the whole transitional period thing, or because they fully believe that there are teams that are just better than James Madison. I would probably lean on it is the former rather than the latter. But I just kind of wanted to come on here and explain all of that. And again, if you kind of want my opinion on this whole thing, should James Madison be in a bowl game? Yes, absolutely. I would love to see James Madison play in the postseason. I'd love to see James Madison play in a New Year's Six bowl game. Even when that team is supposed to get a challenging game, they just blow the other team out of the water. James Madison, that's why they're ranked in my poll. Now, not as highly as maybe some other people may have them, but I still really like this James Madison program. And then even Jacksonville State is playing a lot of really good football right now. But that's kind of the whole reason that they're out, right, is the whole transitional period. However, James Madison, with this letter of appeal, I think is stating, look how successful we've been at the FBS level. We've met all of your requirements. Why should the 2-year transitional period still apply to us if we have met all the requirements that we need to within those 2 years? And I think that's what James Madison is trying to say here, right, is, look, we've met these requirements before we're supposed to, so we should be rewarded for that by basically being able to compete in the postseason. And while this may not fix James Madison's ability to compete in a Sun Belt championship game. It would fix their ability to compete in a New Year's Six bowl game. It would affect their ability to compete in a. Oh no, wait, sorry, I have that backwards. Yep. Rewind. If the waiver here was approved for James, or I should say, if the appeal is approved and James Madison's able to compete in a bowl game, which is really what this is for, then it would be that James Madison would be able to compete in a Sun Belt championship game. They would be able to compete in a New Year's Six bowl game, and I believe they'd also be eligible to be ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee. Now, if there are not enough bowl eligible teams, and you end up having to go to James Madison or Jacksonville State, they would not get into a New Year's Six bowl game. They would kind of fill a spot to where we kind of need a team to play here, so let's take James Madison, let's take Jacksonville State to kind of throw them in there. Obviously, James Madison is going to be making the headlines here because they are undefeated. They're in a pretty competitive conference in the Sun Belt, unlike Jacksonville State and Conference USA, even though that conference is pretty competitive and they're playing pretty well in it. It also has an undefeated team there in the Liberty Flames, but they've done their whole transitional period. What I believe James Madison is saying, and where I agree with James Madison on this, is if there is a school out there, whether it's Kennesaw State coming in next year, whether it's James Madison now, whether it's Jacksonville State or Sam Houston now, or anyone else that is coming down the pipeline here to get into the FBS level, if you are given your 2 years to meet the requirements that the NCAA has set for you, if you meet those requirements before the 2-year period is over, you should be rewarded for that by saying, okay, look, your requirements have been met now. We're going to go ahead and lift that sort of postseason ban. Not technically what it is, but it's kind of what it feels like. So we're going to go ahead and lift that ineligibility from postseason. Go nuts. You can now compete in postseason play. That's what I believe should happen here. I understand why the transitional period is in place. I understand why it maybe in the NCAA's mind needs to be there. And it's just so that these schools can catch up to the requirements that the NCAA and the FBS level of football have presented for these schools to meet. Now, obviously, it's not going to affect any of the big-time schools like the logo that's on my chain or on the jersey or on, you guys know where my allegiances lie. So it's not going to affect anything like that. But what it could affect is some schools coming on down the pipeline that, hey, maybe have already meeting the required requirements from the NCAA and yet still get told that they can't compete in postseason play, even if they put up records like what James Madison is doing. James Madison is doing something unprecedented right now. They are going undefeated, and it's only their second year in FBS competition, and they have joined a conference in the Sun Belt with a lot of very competitive schools. I mean, Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, App State, one of the famed FCS to FBS transitions in history after they beat Michigan as an FCS member, ended up jumping up there to the FBS level, I believe just a couple years after they did that. So I did want to come on here and explain why the things have kind of sat where they are. And yet I'm not backing the NCAA here. Well, okay, I am and I'm not. I'm backing the NCAA in the fact that I understand why these rules are put in place. However, the rules itself have a lot of flaws. They have a lot of flaws, and you shouldn't just look at a program like James Madison or Jacksonville State saying, oh, you've met the requirements. Oh, you're playing some really good football. Okay, good for you. We'll see you in 2 years. That they should be able to compete. You'd be like, okay, well, you have all the requirements filled out. A, B, and C are done. Yeah, hey, looks good. Hey, look at that. You're playing some really good football. Good for you. We love to see it. We hope you do well. Go enjoy the postseason. That's going to do it for this video. If there's anything that comes out about the Michigan thing, I will be recording another video on that today, or really whenever it happens to come out. Do I think it's going to happen now that Michigan is probably in the University Park, Pennsylvania, or at the very least on the plane going to Penn State University right now? No. I do not think anything is going to come of this Michigan thing right now. However, down the line, yes, I absolutely see where it could come into play. But that's going to do it here for this video. Please let me know your guys' opinion on the James Madison Jacksonville State FCS to FBS transition rules. I don't like them. I understand why they are in place. But if you're playing as good a football as these two programs are, you should be allowed to compete in the postseason. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. Enjoy your college football Saturday. Again, if there's any news about Michigan, I will be uploading it today. And I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.